I'm Nima Rajan. The federal government is advising against all non-essential international travel in the face of the rapidly spreading Omicron variant of COVID-19. Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos made the announcement Wednesday following a Tuesday evening meeting between premiers and the Prime Minister. The health minister says the highly transmissible variant is now spreading in Canadian communities and just about anywhere else in the world. Inflation held steady between October and November at 4.7%. Statistics Canada reports gasoline prices shot up 43.6% from last year's levels. This while food prices were up 4.7%, and the back-to-back 4.7% readings represent the biggest gains for the Consumer Price Index since February of 2003. November marked the 8th straight months of headline inflation, coming in above the Bank of Canada's largest or target range of between 1% and 3%. The federal fiscal update includes plans to spend $1.7 billion to triple shipments of rapid COVID-19 tests by the end of March. Provinces and territories have used only 15% of the rapid tests they already have, and they are facing calls by health experts and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland to start distributing the tests. 4 Canadian Armed Forces members went to court today. This to challenge a mandatory COVID-19 vaccine order that they argue violates their constitutional rights. They are opposed to getting the vaccine for different reasons, including concerns about its long-term safety and on religious grounds. Chief of the Defense Staff, General Wayne Eyre's order allows for exemptions on medical, religious, and human rights grounds. But a lawyer for the 4 says their requests were all rejected. Top health officials in BC are recommending against large holiday parties. They are warning COVID-19 cases are poised to rise because of the quick-moving Omicron variant. Dr. Bonnie Henry says British Columbia is in a different place than it was last Christmas. This is thanks to high vaccination rates, rolling booster shots, and a vaccine card program. But instead of announcing new public health orders, she is urging people to keep holiday gatherings to close friends and family and to heed mask mandates. Alberta will distribute rapid COVID-19 tests through pharmacies and Alberta Health Services facilities starting this month. This, according to a Blue Cross email sent to pharmacies and obtained by CTV News. The free testing kits will be available at participating pharmacies in Edmonton, Calgary, and Red Deer, and at Alberta Health Services facilities in other communities. Blue Cross says in the email that shipments would start this week. Ontario Premier Doug Ford announced a sped-up booster rollout today amid the rise of the Omicron variant. All adults in Ontario can book COVID-19 booster shots next Monday if 3 months have passed since their second vaccine dose. The province says large companies will help run workplace and community clinics, and some settings like pharmacies can start offering walk-in boosters to anyone 18 and older as of Friday. Starting at midnight, indoor venues with a greater capacity than 1,000 people can be capped at 50% capacity. Quebec Premier François Legault says it would be irresponsible not to reconsider his plan to ease indoor gathering limits for the holidays. This comes as health officials report 2,386 new COVID-19 cases. Mr. Legault had planned to let the cap for indoor private gatherings rise from 10 people to 20 people on December 23rd. He says that he is sticking with his decision to ease gathering limits for now. The Newfoundland and Labrador government has released a little more information about the massive cyber attack launched on its healthcare system on October 30th. The head of Newfoundland's largest health authority says personal information belonging to anyone who had a COVID-19 test in the province was among the data stolen. Eastern Health President David Diamond said social insurance numbers belonging to 2,500 patients were also taken, though only 1,000 of those people are still alive. Canadian Blood Services has submitted a proposal that recommends Health Canada lift its ban on sexually active gay men donating blood. It suggests donor screening should focus on high-risk behavior regardless of a person's orientation. This is rather than allowing gay men to only give blood if it has been more than 3 months since their last sexual contact. Health Canada is expected to respond to the Blood Service recommendation by the spring. And the Arctic Patrol vessel HMCS Harry Day Wolf is set to return to Halifax today. It returns from its inaugural 4-month deployment, which saw the ship sail through the Northwest Passage as part of Operation Nanook. It is only the second Royal Canadian Navy ship to do that since HMCS Labrador in 1954. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with Forum Daily's weekly market update. Welcome back. We have Forum Daily's weekly market update with Catherine Murray, host of The Buck Stops Here, taking a look at the markets this week. All yours, Catherine.
Thank you, Nima. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your weekly market recap. I am Catherine Murray. Well, today we did have the highly anticipated, basically last key event of the year, and that, of course, is the latest FOMC statement, where the Fed did very much as the market had been expecting, which is that they are going to double the tapering of their bond purchases to $30 billion from $15 billion. Now, that was very much expected, and the market reaction was relatively unchanged. The market also seems to be taking in stride the potential for the U.S. Federal Reserve to increase interest rates 3 times next year. The market had been looking for maybe 2 to 3 times, but it seems as though it might be 3 times in 2022 and also 3 in 2023 and 2024. The U.S. Federal Reserve does see inflation at 5.3% in 2021, which would make sense to the inflation numbers that we've all been seeing and experiencing, even in our home purchases as of late. But then it goes down to 2.6% in 2022. Interestingly, the market originally pulled back on the news today, but seems to really be taking it in stride. And in fact, we saw an end of day rally with tech shares certainly outperforming and the broader markets higher. Perhaps that is because of TINA, there is no alternative. And there's also, of course, the belief that the U.S. Federal Reserve will be very accommodative continually in their stance if, in fact, we see a pullback in the economic activity or what have you. They also did remove the wording of inflation being transitory. That was also very much expected. We basically had this televised from Fed Chair Jerome Powell a week ago, and the market since then has been trending lower. So I think when we step back, we've really got to see whether or not the market will continue its upward momentum like we saw at the end of the day today. Because stepping back, you still have to think about the big picture, which is mixed economic data and also, of course, the Omicron virus and whether or not that will, in fact, slow down the economic recovery, the reopening trade, and also, of course, whether or not that will continue to cause further supply chain disruptions. And then that, of course, increases the inflation component as well. So we're going to see how the market really digests that news and that thinking overnight in Hong Kong and Asia, and also, of course, how the European markets trade and the U.S. and Canadian open tomorrow. But for right now, it does seem as though the news today was very much expected. But again, let's step back and just take a look at some of the economic data as of late. Certainly, we've had hot CPI in the United States as well as Canada, as well as PPI yesterday in the United States. In Canada, it was a 4.7% CPI read today. Food inflation up 6.9%. Canadian housing starts were higher than expected. New home sales were up 9%. We also saw record home prices here in Canada once again, up 25% year over year. Average price in Canada is $720,000. Importantly, Canadian manufacturing showed some nice strength at 4.3%. 17 out of 21 industries showed some gains. So that's positive. But the Chinese economic data as of late showed some weakness. Now, of course, you have to go back to the property concerns and the slowdown in the property market there, which is weighing on some of their economic data. And of course, stepping back, it's the second largest economy in the world next to the United States. And Canada, of course, is affected by slowdown in the United States as well as China, much more so the United States. And that data there in the United States is actually showing some good strength. The Empire manufacturing data came in much better than expected. But again, it's a mixed picture. And I think that does give the U.S. Federal Reserve reason to make sure that the economic recovery is fully on its way before they really get too aggressive in tapering. And well, not necessarily tapering, but the rising of rates. And I think that's what the market is queuing off of. And that's why there's some comments. But again, let's see how tomorrow plays out. In terms of some corporate news, very interesting surrounding Eli Lilly. They did increase their 2021 guidance and 2022, that is on COVID antibody revenue. That stock closed up by 10% today. We did have Air Canada show some weakness, the stock that is on concerns that perhaps we might see further restrictions on travel because of the variant. Canadian Pacific stock was higher today on news that the acquisition of Kansas City Southern is complete. So some positive there. And I think stepping back, we're really going to be focused in on what the 2022 outlook is for the equity markets. Most analysts are anticipating a nice move higher to the tune of 6%, but I'm actually seeing some real strength out there on one particular strategy, which I'll bring to you. That is it for me, Nima. Back to you.
Thanks for that, Catherine. For more analysis and news on the markets, be sure to tune in to Catherine Murray on The Buck Stops Here. All right, stay tuned. We'll be back with a look at rising costs of food in the new year right after the break. Canadians can expect a sharp rise in food prices next year to reach record highs. Canada's food price report predicts the average family of 4 will pay an extra $966 for groceries in 2022, for a total annual food bill of nearly $14,800. That's a 7% rise over this year and the biggest jump that this report has ever predicted. The report says the pandemic only accelerated an 11-year trend of rising food prices. Key drivers pushing costs higher include supply chain disruptions, labor market issues, and adverse weather events. Well, joining us now to give us more insight into Canada's food price report is Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, chief researcher of this report and senior director at the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. Doctor, welcome back to Forum Daily.
Well, thank you.
So tell us a little bit more on the key drivers behind this increase in food prices, sir.
Well, when you look at the world, I guess there are 3 factors. One, supply chains. I think everyone is now aware that there are some issues with supply chains. That's due to 2 reasons. One, capacity to actually to move products around. You need capacity. You need boats. You need drivers for trucks, and it's been a problem. And of course, the other reason is the fact that we're trying to actually restart a global economy. It's like steering a huge cruise ship with paddles. So we'll get to destination, but it does take time. And when it takes time, it costs more money. So that's one factor. The second factor is labor. Across the supply chain, we're seeing some labor issues, shortages, or if you do have talent, if you do have people, you have to pay them more. That's what we're seeing right now, especially in North America. And finally, grains, commodities are actually more expensive. So if you're feeding livestock, if you're producing food, inputs are costing more.
All right, doctor, and what types of food products will likely be impacted?
So when you look at the report, first of all, in 2021, meat was the big story. We don't think it's going to be the case in 2022. So if you're a meat lover out there, that's good news. However, we are expecting dairy to be an issue. We know that just recently the Canadian Dairy Commission actually announced a recommendation to increase farm gate milk prices by 8.4%. That's going to put a lot of pressure on the entire sector, especially in processing. So we are expecting companies like Saputo, Lactalis, Agropur to increase prices charged to grocers, and that eventually will catch up to us. And the other sector is going to be food service, restaurants. We are expecting menu prices to be adjusted again up to 8% in 2022.
All right, sir. So how soon will Canadian families see these rising food prices in 2022 at the grocery stores?
Well, for menus, I think people have noticed already. In fact, 65% of Canadians in the last month have actually gone out at least once to a restaurant. So I assume that people have noticed that menu prices are much higher than they used to. That's going to continue into 2022. For dairy, though, the increase will start in February. So do expect price hikes in the dairy section probably end of February, early March. As for vegetables and bakery goods, those are 2 other sectors or sections which will be impacted by food inflation. We are expecting prices to rise steadily through the winter into the spring.
And is there any way that Canadian families can prepare for these rising costs?
Essentially, you just have to up your game. Show up at the grocery store knowing exactly how much you should be paying for items on your grocery list. Go to more than one place if you can, if you have time. And I would do the opposite of hoarding. Instead of hoarding, going once every week, 2 weeks at a grocery store, go more than one time. You'll end up saving more because supply chains are much slower. A lot of people are actually buying products that are basically they go sour before the expiry date, or they are ripe very, very quickly. So if you go to the grocery store more often, you'll end up wasting less, and you may actually end up finding more enjoy tonight deals. So that's what I would do if you want to save some money.
All right, Dr. Charlebois, a quick 30 seconds left here, but where can our viewers learn more about Canada's food price report?
Well, this report is the product of 4 universities working together, essentially: University of Guelph, University of Saskatchewan, University of British Columbia, and Dalhousie University. You can go on our own website at the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University, and it's on our front page right there.
Dr. Charlebois, always great having you on Forum Daily. Thank you again for joining us.
Take care.
Take care. All right, we'll be back with a look at news stories happening around the world shortly after this break. The head of Vaccine Alliance, Gavi, says he has seen early signs that rich countries are beginning to withhold donations of COVID-19 vaccines out of fears about the Omicron variant. Dr. Seth Berkley is the CEO of the Geneva-based Public-Private Partnership, and he fears the holdback could lead to inequity 2.0. He took stock of nearly 2-year fights against the pandemic as Gavi updated its vaccine supply forecast today. Gavi has repeatedly downscaled its forecasts, largely due to export bans and vaccine hoarding by some producer countries. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says Omicron is expected to be the dominant coronavirus variant in the 27-nation bloc by mid-January. She said today that the bloc is well prepared to fight Omicron, with nearly 67% of the European population now fully vaccinated against the virus. But Ms. von der Leyen expressed sadness that once again Christmas will be overshadowed by the pandemic. The Kremlin says Chinese President Xi Jinping is supporting Russian President Vladimir Putin in his push to get Western security guarantees precluding NATO's eastward expansion. Mr. Putin and Mr. Xi spoke on Wednesday as Moscow faces heightened tensions with the West over a Russian troop buildup near Ukraine's border. The Kremlin has denied having plans to invade the Ukraine, and Mr. Putin has demanded guarantees that NATO will not expand to Ukraine or deploy troops and weapons there. A British activist has lost a Supreme Court case challenging the government's policy refusing gender-neutral passports. Christy Alan Khan argued that the requirement for passport applicants to indicate whether they are male or female breaches human rights laws. The appeal for an X option was unanimously dismissed by a panel of Supreme Court judges. The court's president said no UK law recognizes a non-binary category and that allowing the passport change would leave the government without a coherent approach to the issue. Ms. Alan Khan said the case would be brought to the European Court of Human Rights. A report by a human rights monitoring group based in South Korea and co-founded by a Canadian researcher finds public executions are still taking place in North Korea. The report by the Transitional Justice Working Group says people have been executed over allegations of sex work, drug offenses, and watching contraband videos. Scott Stevens, the Canadian co-founder of the group, says in many cases, executions immediately follow a trial and are mainly done by firing squad. All right, well, meanwhile, a human rights watchdog has urged the United Nations to deploy monitors to Sudan's western region of Darfur. This is where a surge in tribal clashes has killed over 180 people since October. Human Rights Watch said in a statement Wednesday that the monitors should include experts on gender-based crimes. The UN Security Council ended the mandate for a peacekeeping mission in Darfur last year. The violence between Arabs and non-Arabs in Darfur came as Sudan plunged into upheaval after an October military coup. On Tuesday, the U.S. Navy successfully tested a laser weapon and destroyed a floating target in the Middle East. The USS Portland test-fired its laser weapon system demonstrator at the target in the Gulf of Aden, which is the body of water separating East Africa from the Arabian Peninsula. A statement from the U.S. Fifth Fleet said the laser system successfully engaged the target. The laser previously brought down a flying drone last year. The system could be used to counter bomb-laden drone boats used in the Red Sea. The U.S. House has voted to hold former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows in contempt of Congress. This comes after he ceased to cooperate with the January 6th committee investigating the Capitol insurrection. Last night's vote was the first time since the 1830s that the House has voted to hold a former member in contempt. The result sends the matter concerning ex-President Donald Trump's top aide to the Justice Department. A South African court has ordered that former President Jacob Zuma should go back to prison after withdrawing from the medical parole given to him earlier this year. On Wednesday, the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria ruled that the medical parole granted to Mr. Zuma was illegal and that he should go back to prison. He was sentenced for defying a constitutional court order to testify before a commission investigating corruption while he was president. And a telethon hosted by the University of Kentucky Athletics has raised more than $3 million in donations to benefit victims of last weekend's deadly tornadoes in western Kentucky. Proceeds from last night's 4-hour Kentucky United for Tornado Relief telethon will go to the American Red Cross. All right, I'm Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. Take care, Canada. We'll see you next time.